let's just say a wee prayer to get it started, and people can come in during the prayer time. So, who will I pick on to open up? Sophie and Matthew, would you pray for us all tonight, please?
Yeah. Not quite, I forgot my phone. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this time where we're all together. Lord, we thank you that in this moment that we are all gathered here to learn more about how we can touch the lives of others, and how we can be better versions of ourselves in order to be better friends to other people and better listeners, Lord. We pray that you prepare our hearts emotionally and spiritually, that in this moment that you give us greater revelation and greater wisdom into how to navigate difficult conversations and how to be better listeners as well, Lord. So we pray that that in this time that we all have a great time learning together and listening to your voice and moving forward. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Sophie. So a very warm welcome, everyone, and it's good to be here again. Week 4, it's just flying in, isn't it? Yeah, just goes in so quickly. So I'll open up the wee presentation for this evening and share the screen with you. If I can do this without any share. And oh, better get back to the beginning. Okay, slideshow from the beginning. Okay, can we all see that, folks?
Yeah.
Give me a raise your hand or something to let me know. That's great, brilliant. Okay, so we're in week 4. What we've been doing so far has been, we've been doing a bit of journaling. So this is a wee recap in the previous weeks. So we did some journaling. We looked at what counselling is. We touched on the professional bodies and ethics and practice. We did a wee bit of active listening, trying to develop listening skills and the qualities of a counsellor. And then we did a fair chunk on the integration of the Holy Spirit in counselling. We again did some listening and looking at Carol Rogers and the suite of responding skills. And last week we looked very much at the core conditions. So this week we're going to be doing an interview with Aline Heatherall, and she is one of the lecturers at the college. I'll introduce her to you in a minute. I hope to have a wee video up for you if it works. And then we're going to do a wee introduction to what psychodynamic counselling is. Then we'll have a tea break, and then we're going to do a free writing exercise. And there'll be time for feedback and lots of time for dialogue in the second half. So that's our agenda for this evening. So, an interview with Aline. That picture is not of Aline. That is her gorgeous dog. It's not her dog, but it's one that looks like her dog. And so, Aline, are you unmuted?
I was, but I think, yeah.
Oh, no, you're unmuted now. Fantastic. So, Aline is a very experienced counsellor and is one of the lecturers at Destiny College in Glasgow. She's run her own private practice. She's worked for different agencies. You can tell us a wee bit more about yourself. And I met her by accident. Well, I don't think it was an accident, actually. I think it was a divine intervention. An Association of Christian Counsellors meeting or seminar. It was either Perth or somewhere down south. We can't quite remember. Anyway, Aline was doing her bit, and I thought she'd be great to come and do some teaching at the college. And that was what, 2016, 15, 16?
15.
2015, and she's been with us ever since. So it's been a great journey. So over to you, Aline. Tell us a wee bit more about yourself, how you get into counselling and what you're doing now and how you've come to this place where you are now.
Well, I was originally a nurse, a general nurse, and then I did midwifery. And I loved that, but I really loved the relationship with the patients more than anything, and used to get into trouble as a student nurse for sitting on the bed and chatting to the patients So I was living overseas and was nursing, but could no longer nurse where I was living. So I'd always thought counselling was a good idea. I'd had some loss in my life, had experienced some counselling, and it really appealed to me. And so it was just an opportunity that I could pursue this. So I started by doing an undergraduate, and then I did my master's in counselling studies. Eventually worked overseas, and then came back here and couldn't get a job. I think my CV was a bit bizarre. So I applied to do a cognitive behavioral diploma because I'd really liked that. I thought it really appealed to me when I was doing my previous training. So I did that course, and just before I started that course, I got a job at Rape Crisis Sexual Abuse Centre. So I worked there, worked for another agency, homelessness and mostly personality disorders, addictions, and set up a counselling service within that agency. And then after 5 years there, I then went in and did my own practice for 5 years. No, it couldn't have been 4 years. Maybe I was 4 years there. Anyway, I closed that last year due to personal circumstances. My husband was very sick, so I closed it down to be with him. And very sadly, he died last September. So I have just returned to work. But I'm moving. I live down near Dumfries in the countryside there, and my plan, if it wasn't for the COVID, was to move to Glasgow because that's where my family, my friends, destiny. So I am planning to move to Glasgow. So, but I decided not to do private practice. So I'm currently working for delivering CBT online for NHS IAP service. So I do that for, I do 18 clients a week with them and teaching Destiny. And I do the HNC and Destiny and the HND. And I love it. And that's enough about me, is it, Dave?
That's great. Thanks, Arlene. So this evening, because this is just an introduction course, so they'll be learning just a snapshot of CBT and then touching on psychodynamics. So you're far better at talking about CBT than I am. So can you tell us maybe a bit more than just a couple of sentences of what's involved in CBT? First, what does CBT stand for? Where is its history from? And then what's the modern thinking around CBT?
Well, CBT stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, and it looks at the cognitive processes, which is the thinking, the behavior, the feelings, the beliefs, the attitudes, the images that a person has that causes them emotional distress and leads to perhaps dysfunctional behavior. So it all began with behavioral therapy, and it goes back to Rogers really, and REBT, and then move forward into Aaron Beck is the sort of foundation father of CBT, and then into the modern contemporary CBT that we have today. But it's not just a single thing. You've got acceptance and commitment therapy, you've got mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive processing therapy. I mean, there is a lot under the umbrella. And I think some of you might be thinking of training at Destiny. And first of all, I'm biased. It's a fantastic environment to learn in, but you're getting a really good integrative base. And I do think that's great. And if you do that, then to add to that with something that really appeals to you, like psychodynamic or CBT, which is what I did. I trained integratively and then went on and added CBT diploma because that's what, and then so I've sort of, because I really liked CBT. CBT doesn't, sorry Dave, CBT, you could have clients coming to you and talking about their feelings every week, and they would sit and tell you how awful they felt, but nothing would ever change. And the trouble is, if you treat your feelings, I feel bad, therefore something bad is happening. Feelings often become facts. and drive dysfunctional thinking, which leads to dysfunctional behavior. So it's tackling that. And of course, we listen to the client and we listen to their feelings, but it's very proactive. It's you know, we're solution focused, and it's research based. So you know, it actually works.
Okay, so, but I know that, Eileen, you don't just stick to a CBT approach, or should I say, really, the CBT approach has maybe expanded and become maybe a bit more integrative, certainly more recently. So you've spoken a wee bit about the benefits because it's research-based, it's solution-focused, it moves the client on from continually talking about their feelings for the next 2 years. So, but I know that you don't just work with a single approach. What do you think are the benefits of integrating other approaches into your counselling?
Well, I think as a CBT psychotherapist, we take everything that works. We just nick it from any model. If there's something that works, we'll use it. And it's a very eclectic, integrative approach anyway. But I do also think that one size doesn't fit all. And, you know, having a good toolbox of skills is really good. And so an integrative approach is the way to go, I think. To train in just one model leaves you quite limited, because clients come in all shapes and sizes and abilities as well.
Great, thanks, Eileen. Now, you've had your own private practice, and you still actually, although you're doing some work for the NHS, it's still within your own private practice. What advice would you give to someone who's at the beginning of their counselling training and thinking about, one day I'd like to have my own practice? What advice would you give them?
I think, first of all, if you go wherever you choose to do your training, make sure it's accredited by that you're going to get an accredit. It's going to give you the qualification that allows you, as Destiny does, to become a member of one of the main governing bodies like BABCP or BACP. That's really important. People do all these courses and nobody will employ you and nobody will come to you because you haven't got anything that's credible. So that's important. You need to get experience. You need to be trained well, and then you need to get experience. You can't come straight out the gate and open up a private practice. I believe you need to work for a few years and get some experience working for another agency or another practice, and get some experience under your belt before you go solo.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know that when we first started counselling at Destiny, it was I had worked in the voluntary sector for a number of years before we even opened the church into taking clients, and we started just with church members, and now of course we've got general members of the public. So here's a great opportunity, guys, for you to ask any questions of Eileen. She's got a wealth of experience and you can just ask any questions at all. So if Rumbi, if you want to ask a question, put up your hand. If you go to the wee reactions button, it puts the hand up and Rumbi will unmute you. Okay. Come on, folks, we've been here for a while now. We should have some questions here.
Hi, Rumbi.
Hello, George.
Thanks, George.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, George.
Yes, my question is to Eileen. Eileen, could you explain the therapeutic, which is, I believe, similar to treatment? What is the method of the therapy, or what is the method of the treatment? Do you inject drugs, or what do you do as a method of the therapy or the treatment?
Okay, thanks, George. No, cognitive behavioral therapy is a talking therapy.
Okay.
But it's very much more structured than psychodynamic or person-centered humanistic therapies. So we're we use case formulations, and everything's goal setting and planned, and you have a criteria. You don't just have anxiety. It's specific. We go by the diagnostic statistical manual. There's a sort of Bible of mental health to differentiate, for instance, between panic disorder or general anxiety disorder, because they're not the same and you don't treat them the same. But if I turned up to a person-centered therapist, they probably would treat me the same. So there are marked differences. But I could talk about it all night, and I think Dave was going to throw me out. So, but it's a talking therapy, but it's quite structured and quite different. It just is a different model.
I think that word treatment, George, because you mentioned the word treatment. So
Yes.
treatment always sounds to me, I mean, we do treat our clients.
Okay.
Right? But treatment, unlike going to the doctors, treatment is something that's done to you at the doctors. Treatment within the counseling context is something you do with your client. That's the big difference.
All right. Okay.
Well, and can I just say though that the core conditions in cognitive behavioral therapy are absolutely the same as in person-centered therapy of empathy and congruence and building up a strong therapeutic relationship. Exactly the same. And it is collaborative. It's false to believe that it's not. But it has a lot of bad press because most people are exposed to cognitive therapy by being just 6-session treatment through the NHS, which is more a self-help. And that is not what a cognitive psychotherapist in stage 3 delivery, high intensity, is delivering at all. There's no comparison. So it is collaborative, and you have exactly the same core conditions that you have in any other model of therapy.
Okay, so who does the diagnosis, Elaine?
Well, it depends if I'm assessing or not, but normally they'd guide a psychologist would do what we call a psych assessment.
All right.
And the client would come to us with, I mean, if I'm in private practice, then I would diagnose and do assessments myself, and I would be saying this client presents with the criteria for OCD. I wouldn't be saying this client has OCD because I'm a psychotherapist, I'm not a psychologist.
Okay.
But I'm able to present, if I'm doing assessments, then I'm able to present, and I have to justify, because I've got to say why I'm treating them the way I'm treating them.
Yes.
Yeah, an example might be as well, George, if I meet a client that because of being experienced and good training, you would recognize some of the traits, say, of someone with a bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And my diagnosis might be, I think this person's got a bipolar disorder. But I would be recommending that they go and see a psychiatrist, or certainly go and see their GP. I might even write to the GP.
Okay.
Because sometimes the counsellors get to see it before the GPs do.
Okay.
With the client's permission, of course. Unless they're dangerous. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Elaine. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yes. Hi, Ellen.
Hello.
My question is, I understand now that CBT is an approach used in psychotherapy, and then I've heard this evening about psychodynamics. Is that a different approach, or how many approaches really are there?
There's hundreds of different approaches, Stella, hundreds. And people, my husband used to say to me, hurry up and write a book, invent a therapy. But I didn't, not yet anyway. I mean, you've got therapies that are coming out all the time. We have mindfulness cognitive therapy. We have acceptance and commitment therapy. We have trauma-focused, trauma-based. You name it. They come out all the time. And but the main ones, the sort of front runners, would be cognitive behavioral, person-centered, and psychodynamic. And those are the ones that I trained in when I did my integrative masters.
Yeah.
So, and then I chose to specialize more in CBT. Some students don't do that. They prefer to do a bit more training in psychodynamic. but they're all different approaches, different models of counseling and psychotherapy. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that help, Stella?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other-
CBT is the best.
It's not really, but she thinks it is.
You'll think, just wait till you do the course, and then I'll convert all, Dave. Oh.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do the psychodynamic training on the HNC as well.
Yeah.
So it's crazy because I do what's called Jungian sand play training. So really, I'm on one side of my head, I'm away over here playing in sand and very Jungian, and on the other side, I'm sort of away over here and very sort of, I don't know, CBT brain. So I have both, and we do that in psychodynamic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. One more question.
Hi, could I ask a question? With CBT, is it only something you would use with adults, or would you use it with children as well?
Everybody, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Yep. Okay.
It's very good, and it's not. You can use it with children, young people with learning difficulties or ADHD, Asperger's on the spectrum, etc., etc. It's very, very adaptable and applicable. People think, oh, you can't do it. You get homework. You have to write things down. That's not true. I've worked with people. We've never written anything down. It's just been verbalized. You know, you adapt. You're creative. You make it work for the client. You know. So no, it's very adaptable and can work with everybody and anybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, Aline. It's great to see you, and
Great to see you too.
we'll catch up soon, eh?
Yes, I'm in next Friday.
Brilliant.
Understanding addictions.
Oh yeah, well. Good stuff.
Everybody, I hope to see some of you again.
Bye bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
Aline.
bye.
Thank you, Aline.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's share the screen again. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to try and show you a wee video here. Aline kind of explained CBT, but I want to see if I can show you this video. Can you see it coming up on YouTube just now?
Of CBT.
No.
Guide to what CBT is and how you can decide.
I need to share the screen with you first, I think. Well, wait a minute to try this. I need to try something else. New share. I think it's this one. Share.
Now that we've already talked about the three main counselling approaches and the main themes of the humanistic approach, now let's break down the psychodynamic.
Oh, that's the wrong video. Sorry, guys. It's this one I should be showing you. Aline's probably explained enough of it anyway, I think. See if this one works.
Making sense of CBT.
Okay, let me just stop this.
CBT is.
Got it, right. New share, and it's this one here. Share. Can you see that?
Yep.
Here we go.
And how you can decide whether it's best.
Can you hear it?
If you're living with a mental health problem,
Yep.
it'd be hard to know which way to turn or what to do to feel better. You might go to your GP, and one of the first things they might offer is CBT, which stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. It combines cognitive therapy, examining the things you think, and behavioral therapy, examining the things you do. The word therapy might make you think of laying on a couch talking to a man with spectacles and a beard about your childhood while he analyzes your dreams. But CBT is actually a very practical type of talking therapy, which focuses on goals and focuses mostly on the present day and things that are affecting you in your life now. The theory behind CBT is that the way we think about situations can affect the way we feel and behave. It does this by dealing with how your thoughts affect your feelings and behaviors, and teaches you coping skills for dealing with different problems. For example, you might make a simple mistake, like, say, burning the dinner. This might make you think bad things, and it might make you feel worthless and inadequate, which could lead you to do things like withdrawing, snapping at your family, or trying to avoid things which you think might go wrong. Or perhaps you've been invited out for drinks with some friends, and you start thinking negative things. This might make you feel anxious and scared, which might make you do something like saying no to the invite, avoiding your friends completely, or using drink and drugs to cope with the situation. Over time, whether it's years, weeks, or months, this cycle of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors may have happened so many times, it's become like a habit. You start avoiding situations more and more, or automatically blame yourself if something goes wrong. And the more you do these things, the worse it can get. A CBT therapist will help you break this cycle and figure out what sorts of negative feelings, thoughts, and behaviors might be contributing to the problems you're experiencing. They will help you deal with your negative thinking and help you change your behavior, both of which will lead to an improvement in your mood. CBT can be helpful for people with nearly every diagnosis you can think of, and can be delivered through one-on-one sessions, in groups, self-help books, online, or through a CD-ROM. That doesn't mean that CBT works for everyone, though. Some people struggle with it because they find it just too hard to talk about their feelings. CBT is usually quite a short-term treatment, and so you may find that your problems are too complex to deal with in the time. It can also be quite hard work. Your therapist will probably set you homework, and you have to really practice the skills they teach you to see a difference in how you're feeling. If you don't think CBT is the right treatment for you, you should be able to talk to your GP about what alternatives there are. The Mind website also has lots of information about the different treatments that are available for a wide range of mental health problems. And Mind's info line can also talk to you about what you might find helpful.
Okay, so let me share the rest. It's quite a nice wee simple video that okay, so going on to CBT, this is kind of taking it.
Industry has been ripped off the
wait a minute, escape. Hold on a second. I don't know what's happening here.
When I heard the BBC announce a couple of weeks
ago
that the CMA had issued a scathing report.
Watch this full series at the links in the description below.
That's it. I had to close something down. Are we still on the screen, guys? Can you see reaction cycle?
It's gone.
We can only see you at the minute, Dave.
Okay, okay. I need to share the screen again. Sorry, the technology is annoying me a wee bit. Okay, share screen. Let me put this up. Share screen, and on to this one. Share, and we're down here.
That's us.
Okay, so we're on this thing called the reaction cycle here, and so it's taken what Aline was saying, just taking a wee stage further, and so often you'll hear me talking about an external event or a trigger, and what happens when that happens to someone, the brain automatically, especially habitually, if you've been thinking a particular way for a long period of time, you've set up neural pathways in your brain, and these are just wee triggers in your brain. The brain has this incredible ability of when it wires something together, it kind of stays that way until we consciously make that change. And so the brain sends a message and there's a physical reaction. So the physical reaction would be adrenaline and cortisol running into the body, which create feelings. Now, people often come to CBT when they are unable to cope with their feelings or their thoughts. So thoughts and perceptions, feelings, they can be interactive. They can change around in this cycle. Then there's a behavioral response, and it's when the behavioral response is no longer good for the individual that they seek to change. So the CBT therapist would be working very much in these areas here, the feelings and the thoughts and perceptions, okay? And looking at how this behavior changes. And so they do a lot of exercising and looking at how your thought patterns have come, what are the feelings now, and this whole idea of changing cognition, which is really the brain. So eventually what's supposed to happen is the brain starts sending different messages into the body and the different feelings emerge. It takes a long time for that to happen. So what often CBT therapists will work with is, although the feeling might stay the same, you can have a different perception of it. So let's say, for example, you're going to a place where there's people you don't like, or let's say you've been confronted by your boss. It's a bit like going to the headmaster, right? I want to see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, don't be late, right? Okay, so immediately the brain sends these cortisol and adrenaline into the body. There's a physical reaction. The feelings go, oh no, what's he going to say? And so then you can very quickly start up a perception. It's going to be wrong. It's going to be a problem. He'll say this to me and then I'll say that. You've got a whole drama going on in your head. There's a behavioral response. You walk into that meeting nervous and unsure, and then he gives you a pay rise. Really? So you went through all that night of problems for something completely that was only triggered. And it's often those triggers come from a historical event. Like, say, for example, you were a child and you've been sent to the headmaster's office for punishment. So having a meeting with the boss relates to that meeting with the headmaster. So, so psychodynamic stuff will go into, you know, where all these feelings come from. CBT will tend to say, well, let's change the thought of perception. I like to find out where it all comes from. Okay, so next thing is, I want to see if I can get this one. Yes, any questions?
Sorry, can I just ask you, it's Christine, can I just ask, sorry, I missed last week, so you might have covered this, but just when you're talking about that, it makes me think of, I think it's Romans 12:2, where it talks about being transformed by the renewal of your mind. And is that kind of where the spiritual stuff would fit in really nicely with CBT, that idea of changing your thought process, which helps you change your behavior?
Yep, I think that what can often happen within a Christian context is that people can get scriptures and they wire them into their brain like a memory, but the behavior doesn't change. They're still full of fear, and yet they've got all these scriptures in their head. So how come? And so just adding in biblical knowledge doesn't really change it. So when we're talking about the mind here, we're not talking about knowledge or the brain in that sense. The mind, if you like, when Paul speaks about having the mind of Christ, another way of thinking that is having the consciousness of Christ. And that is being able to observe what's going on and apply the changes. So I've heard many people saying, you know, I'm a child of God. I love being I'm a princess of the Lord, and yet they behave like demons, right? And you think, how can they say that? And now they actually might be a child of the Lord in terms of information, but not in terms of transformation. And counseling is always about transformation. And Christianity is about transformation, you know, so, and I think it's the bringing of both of those together that creates that transformed heart. Okay, very good.
Thanks.
And of course, I think sometimes, of course, Kristen, just to go on there, is sometimes people don't realize what's going on, and that they're born again, they're citizens of heaven, but their history has caused them so much damage that it blocks that change from happening. And God doesn't do this. Very occasionally, you'll see the person that's just had a sudden psychic change, but that's rare. most of the time they've just got to work through their stuff. Okay, good. So we're going to look a wee bit at psychodynamic counselling. I'm going to see if this works this time, folks. So let me copy and paste this. Let's see when you share. Let me share it up already. It's my two girls that were talking that I want to put on. No. Right. Okay. To YouTube somewhere. YouTube's here. Take this out of the way. Control V. Is this it? We'll see if this works. If it doesn't work, I'll just go through some of the other things. Can we all see this?
Yeah. Yep. But the volume is quite low.
Psychodynamic therapy is a therapeutic approach and theory developed and recognized by theorists such as Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Melanie Klein, Heinz Knut, Alfred Adler, and of course there are many others. So
we can't hear it, Dave.
Volume is low.
The volume's low.
Mm-hmm.
Can you turn it up a bit, please?
I can't see it, or view it.
Still very low.
Dave, would you do it from beginning again because we couldn't hear anything? You know?
Like when you couldn't wait for the waiter to refill your champagne glass the other day and you had
What's
to
that,
count
Dave? Like,
instead.
Such a liar. That is
Selfishness.
true.
It's unbelievable. Shocking. Now it's the ego that behaves like the reality checker. It is a mediator that deals with the desires and pressures from the instant gratification that the child wants. And it's the ego that recognizes that other people have wants and needs too.
So can you tell the viewers I didn't take your champagne and that I was able to delay gratification?
All right, please. Now, for the purposes of this video, that is true. And that it was your ego allowing you to do that. And we call that self-regulation. So the other unconscious motive that develops last is called the superego. And this is based on the rights and wrongs.
Do you mean like morals and judgments?
Yes.
So my superego helped me to recognize that it was not good for me to help myself to the champagne because I knew on some level that it was wrong and potentially embarrassing.
Yes, it would have been really embarrassing for you, Debs. So, yes, Debbie, you were able to self-regulate.
Great. So, Riz, what you've clarified is that it creates demands, the ego gives a reality check, and the superego provides morality.
And these three made up parts are called a tripartite.
Yes, so that's the id, the ego, and the superego.
Brilliant. Okay, well that clarifies that. So moving on,
move on
to further dynamic therapy. It is a commonly used therapy to treat depression and anxiety disorders. Freud's psychoanalysis is a specific form of psychodynamic therapy, and in its classic approach, psychoanalysis can be a lengthy process. You would be meeting a psychoanalyst who would be typically a blank screen, and a patient would visit them anything from 2 to 5 sessions a week over a period of several years.
Yes, psychodynamic therapy aims to turn you inside out and put you back together again. It's the most complex of all the talking therapies, and it's had the most influence on most other popular theories. Unlike psychoanalysis, meeting several times per week, modern psychodynamic therapists generally meet their clients once a week. But if you're in crisis, you could be invited to meet more than once a week.
Yes, the psychodynamic approach believes that people are cured by gaining insight, by bringing their unconscious thoughts and motivations into conscious awareness and picking up hidden meanings and patterns that are shared in each session.
Yes, so the aim is to also release repressed emotions and experiences. It is widely used to help clients recognize and understand how unconscious factors affect their current relationships and their patterns of behavior.
So this therapeutic process also helps you resolve and understand your problems with relationships, both past and present, by increasing awareness of your inner world. It's different from other therapies because its aim is for deep-seated change in your personality and your emotional development.
Yes, the goal is to help you understand serious psychological disorders and work towards changing deep-rooted complex distress, particularly feelings of loss. It also helps you to see the way in which you have developed defense mechanisms as a way of coping. And this therapy helps to change those patterns.
Yes, that's true, Debs. However, this theory is not just limited to those with extreme mental health problems like myself. There are many people who experience a loss of meaning and who are looking for more peace and contentment. And this kind of therapy can be very useful for that.
Sure. Yes, so like all therapies, the therapeutic relationship is considered paramount to the process. And in psychodynamic therapy, the relationship helps to highlight how you interact in all your relationships by allowing you to transfer your feelings of significant others onto the therapist. And it can illuminate how your early life relationships still affect you today.
Yes, and it's this looking into your landscape and exploring with you your interpersonal relationships and how it supports you to see your part, how patterns and dynamics, including games, become acted out in your current life. And through exploration, you become empowered to transform these dynamics into healthier patterns of relating.
So fundamentally, the goal of psychodynamic therapy is to encourage self-awareness and understanding of the influence of your past onto your present behavior. Great.
So we can change this now. Escape. Want to close that down altogether. Okay. So we've got a few minutes before the break. So tell me, now that you've seen, so last week we looked at person-centered therapy, which was all very much about the relationship, and Rogers reckoned that the relationship by itself, given the right conditions by the therapist, would create therapeutic change for the client. Cognitive behavioral therapy is very much engaging the client in the process. They all engage the client in the process, but cognitive behavioral therapy is really letting them look at their feelings, look at their thoughts, analyze it themselves, and hope that the change will take place. And then psychodynamic works at another level altogether. And so for people that really want answers, right, that want to know, well, why do I think and feel like that? Psychodynamic is really, and so for me, I love psychodynamic because I want to know the reasons. Once I'm hooked, I want to get right in and find out what was going on in that person's background, what was going on in my background, what went in there that created that way of thinking and being. So that's the stuff that really interests me as a therapist. And Aline would be, whilst she has an interest in that, she's very much about, you know, let's see if we can try to create the change. And I want to create the change, but I like to know what I'm changing, if you know what I mean. And I don't want to sound that I'm degrading CBT, because the CBT of 20 years ago is vastly different from what it is now. The psychodynamic, the CBT therapists that we've got now that are well trained and integrative are able to cross these divides. So they're not really divides anyway, unless you're a purist. So I like to be integrative. So before the break, any more questions? Any questions on psychodynamic? Okay, Hazel.
Hi, I was just wondering how well psychodynamic therapy would work on someone who is probably a bit more self-aware naturally, or has had kind of training on how to be more self-aware. Does it still work well, or would other therapies work better in that situation?
Well, I think self-awareness is one of these, it's an onion, isn't it? So we're always peeling away at things. We've never really got the full picture of everything. So if I was going to a therapist now and thinking, oh, I'm having some struggle, and we've always, I mean, the longer I've been doing this, the more I realize how unfixed I am and how little I really know. So I suppose the answer to that is yes. So the older I grow, the more I recall how little I knew when I knew it all. So I remember that wee thing. So yeah, of course it would. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, has got a question.
Another question?
Hi, yes. I just wondered, would this psychodynamic therapy take a lot longer than the cognitive therapy?
Yes.
Because you're sort of seem to be delving deeper. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Psychodynamic counseling does take longer because you're taking longer to explore the client's story and history. And sometimes, especially if someone has had a lot of trauma, you might be revisiting that quite regularly, but at the same time, you don't want to throw them into the depth of the trauma all at once. So it's kind of, I see it a wee bit like having them on the seashore and the waves of just lapping up on the ankles. You take time before you go into the deep water. They've got to learn how to go into the deep water. But I'll tell you this, when they do and they have an understanding and they go, that's what that's about, 90% of it in psychodynamic counseling is, that's what this is, I can change that. So an example will be then, if you look at a CBT model, the trigger comes, the feelings might come, and you go, that's actually related to when I was 5. This isn't now. This is not now. Let me see about how I can change now. And so you actually get a real handle on your own life and your own way of reacting. And it never ends.
Sorry, I interrupted.
It's okay, Carol, carry on.
No, I was going to say, I really like the analogy you gave there with the seashore, because that makes it seem like a really gentle and sort of tempered approach, you know, rather than just being really intense and going straight into.
And that's why it takes time. You know, it's still painful. You still have to face the pain, you know. Okay, guys. So we're going to have a break time, but I want you to do a wee bit of mindfulness during your break. Okay? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go and have a drink of something, but I want you to do this mindfully. So I want you to think about getting up from the seat, think of your body, feel your feet in your shoes as you go to the tap. If you're taking some water, you're putting on the kettle, and be very mindful of what you're doing, because this is a very automatic thing. Feel what the kettle feels like, the water coming into the glass or whatever you're doing, whatever drink you're having. Pour yourself your drink, and then I want you to taste it mindfully. So no, let's just gulp it down. I want you to taste it, and I want you to become aware of the sensations on your tongue while you're tasting it. So you're doing something very mindfully during the break, and we've got 15 minutes to do that, okay? So you'll be back here at 8:10, okay? See you then. Okay, folks, let's get back to work. I'll do this wee share screen thing again. Okay. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, so we're still staying on psychodynamic because it's probably the most complex of the therapies. It's one which I would tend to practice only because this is what usually you find that the thing that therapists, when they go in to counselling and they get their own counselling, the counselling that they most benefit from is usually the counselling that they will tend to practice in. So that's kind of what happened to me. So our thinking and behaviour is affected by processes of which we are not fully conscious. We think we're conscious, but we are doing things unconsciously all of the time. That's why I did that wee thing about going and making a cup of tea mindfully. Thinking, normally we don't even think about it. We know where the kettle is, like going in a car, you drive unconsciously. And so the same thing would happen with behaviors and thinking patterns. The autonomic nervous system cuts right into place. These things that are wired into the brain. See, the brain's very efficient. It doesn't want you to think about too much. The more it can make unconscious, the better. So for example, if somebody's learning to play the piano, first of all, it's really hard, isn't it? Really difficult to learn to play the piano. And then the more they practice, the more they practice, the more they practice, suddenly they're not thinking about where the G is or the C is, whatever the note is. I don't know, I'm not a pianist. But it's the same thing with our behavior. So recognition of past experiences, particularly in childhood, can help us understand present difficulties. So what happens in our very early childhood, before the age of 7 or 8, is that the cognitive part of our brain that allows us to think and rationalize hasn't really grown very much. So we live in what's known as a sensory world. So our experiences as a young child, our emotional experiences, we've internalized, and they sit deep in the subconscious, according to psychodynamic theory. And when we can uncover that as an adult and bring the cognitive part of our brain into it, we can see, that's what happened. That's why I feel like that. And these themes and patterns we live out in our lives, we're often not aware of them. You will still react to the same things that you've reacted to for years. And you're wondering, what is it that's causing that reaction? So we have a relationship with different parts of ourselves, our internal world, as well as other people in the external world. And these relationships have had with significant others in our lives, particularly our parents, may be recreated with the therapist. Now, the therapist doesn't become the person's parent, but what happens is the individual starts to the word is transfer. So if the counsellor's sitting like that, then as the client's telling the story and they get maybe get angry or frustrated, they can often project that onto the therapist, and the therapist can use that particular event within the counselling room to help the client recognise where it really comes from. It's an interesting form of therapy. This is where this next slide here kind of takes in a bit of CBT as well as psychodynamic. So if we look at the top of that, we'll see that this is my we attempt at an iceberg here. So above the water, we can see behaviors, and that's what we allow people to see, isn't it? That's what people see. They see our behaviors. And you say they can see your attitudes. They can't really, they can only see the behavior of your attitude. So lying underneath our behaviors are our attitudes. And then we get our attitudes from the values that we have in life. What is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong. That's what creates the attitude. Can you see that? What we decide is morally right or wrong from our own values, and these values, some of these values may even be unconscious, because what mummy and dad said were good. So for example, if mummy and daddy said you're not good, you have a value system that says you're not good. And your attitude is often you're trying to hide that, or you try to prove yourself, or you try to bring others down. So different behaviors come out of different things. And then we've got beliefs underneath our values. That's the things that we truly believe. Now, I'm not talking about Christian beliefs here. It's these beliefs that we have about ourselves that we believe are true. They go without question. They're true at an unconscious level. And we get all of these beliefs, values, attitudes, and behaviors from what's known, and I love this, it's called our cultural indoctrination. So our cultural indoctrination is how you were brought up as a child, where you went to school, the significant adults around you gave you that cultural indoctrination that was internalized with you as a child. And that's the very basis of psychodynamic work. And it's when we can get into the cultural indoctrination and see what I was told I might believe, but it's a lie. So if you were told you're not good enough or you're not enough, you actually believe that as a child. You believe it even at an emotional level. But when working psychodynamically, you can be confronted with this. And the real knowledge of the truth sets us free, and you say, ah, they said I'm not good. But the truth of the matter is, as I looking upon this situation as an adult looking at that broken child, he was good and he is good, and the change occurs. You can't really do this just thinking about it. You actually have to go into the feelings, and that's the hard work. So our cultural indoctrination is so important.
Dave, can I just interrupt and ask a question here?
Sure, of course.
Is this the basis, because what you're talking about, cultural indoctrination, is that the same sort of stuff as you go through in the Freedom in Christ program?
The what program?
The Freedom in Christ program.
I don't know the Freedom in Christ program.
Oh, right, sorry.
Is that the Neil T. Anderson program?
Yeah, because just what you're saying about what you believe, and if you believe a lie, you basically in the Freedom in Christ program, it takes you through a.
Yeah, but the Freedom in Christ program is very cognitive. It's
right.
Like it's sort of fact. It's information. You really need to do this therapeutically, and I don't think the Freedom in Christ program just gives you information. You need to experience the re-experience the cultural indoctrination as an adult to recognize, oh, when this comes up again, this is the feeling I've got. It's not just information. Hold on, I'll just change this lighting. Although I know that a wee bit about, but there's a lot of truth written in that program. So it's the knowledge of the truth that sets you free, but knowledge is not something that's just information on our brain. Knowledge needs to be experienced. And when we have experienced at the very depth of our being the love of God, the true love of God and the depth of our being, then how come I'm still feel not enough? And yet I've experienced this. And many people have got these dual experiences going on and they can't quite get this. And I always say, as long as we live, we'll never be able to separate our brokenness from our wholeness, our holiness, if you like, from our sinfulness, and our spirituality from our humanity. They're always going to be interlinked. But the more you work on yourself, the more spiritual the aim is to become. But you'll go back and forth. It's not like there's a pass mark or anything like that. Certainly not. You don't have to reach a required level for salvation. We're saved. But in terms of sanctification, we could be continuing to grow. Okay. So here's you've got a wee exercise to do for 6 minutes, a 6-minute exercise. You'll need a piece of paper and a pen, an A4 piece of paper if you can, or an A5. Don't do this in the computer, please. Grab a piece of paper. I want you to write as fast as you can. Don't you take your pen off the page. Well, you can take your pen off the page if you're going to change a word, obviously. Do not edit or pay attention to spelling. Stop at the end of the page. There'll be no need to share this with anyone if you don't want to. It can be completely private. The main thing is to let go of control. It only has to mean something to you. So what often happens is people say, well, I don't know what to write. Just start writing words. And I want you to do this unconsciously. Now, you might be really surprised what comes up. You might think, I don't want to preempt it. But just start writing. You might want to be writing about feelings or something, anything at all, but just don't stop and don't think about it. You're not putting paragraphs and new sentences. So I'm going to give you 6 minutes to do this exercise. I'm not going to tell you why until you've done it, right? So piece of paper, I'm going to join in. So I'll be doing exactly the same thing for the next 6 minutes. So go, start writing. Okay, folks, come back to me now. Stop writing. Stop writing. That was you. You've just had 6 minutes of creative freedom. Okay, so before we go on to this wee part here, let me just go back a second. So, okay, I know some people still writing. They've got so engrossed in it. Get the sentence ended. Stop the writing. Okay. Some people, this is known as automatic. What you've done there is a bit of automatic writing. Some people have a theory that the Holy Spirit speaks through the unconscious mind, and automatic writing can bring messages into being. Instead of leaving it all undiscovered in your head, you're able to look at what you've written from a spiritual context and use it for your healing and really know what you hear is real. Now, just to caveat that, you might have written something down that has nothing to do with the Holy Spirit, but you've got some subconscious memories or feelings, or if you're anything like me, you'll have them coming up mixed. You'll be writing something about one thing, and then the next thing, there's something else comes up, and you think, my goodness. And it's only when you read it back that you'd think, gee, where did that come from? But automatic writing, if you don't get overly holy in it, because the idea is not to judge it. Even if you've written down swear words, for example, don't judge it. It's there, it's in you. So let's know, God can see that stuff that's inside you. He knows every fiber. That's why he says every hair on your head is counted. He knows exactly what we feel and think. And yet so often we try to, I'm not saying we should display it publicly, but we can't hide it from him. But sometimes we try and hide it from ourselves. So it's a tool to develop your spirituality further, and quite an effective one. You will bump against your ego and your negative thoughts and your resistances even to do it. It's said that the subconscious speaks the truth of where you're at. This is great because you'll be able to see how you judge yourself, and you can use the writing exercise to push your way through it. The challenge is how I know what the Holy Spirit is working through me, or just some random message from a subconscious mind. The litmus test here is always the Bible. So none of us have got any right to try and change the Bible. And if you think God is speaking to you and you're not quite sure, go and ask somebody. Go to a pastor that you know has got some understanding of spirituality, and go and speak to them. Okay. So let's open a wee bit of dialogue now. I'm going to stop the share. This is the questions that I'm going to ask. How did you do with the exercise? So think about this just now. How did you do with the exercise? Were there any surprises? You don't have to read what the surprises were. You don't have to tell us what it revealed, but I want you to say it revealed this thing about me without going into details. I don't want you to give away any confidentialities if you don't want to. And then what will you do now? So after you do your unconscious writing, this is a good thing to do next. So let's stop this. So folks, how did that exercise go? Was everyone able to do it? Was anybody unable to do it at all? Put your hand up so we can unmute you if you want to. Okay, so everybody, so tell us, what was it like for you doing that exercise? Well, let's hear from a couple of people. Richard Glass, I want to hear from you. I'm just picking you out here.
I was just unmuting my...
good.
Anyway, I've got to say I found it really weird.
Yeah.
Exactly what you said there. I started with one subject, went on to another, and the amount of different things that I covered in that 6 minutes is incredible.
So what does that say about your mind?
Oh, you know what? I need to go to a counsellor.
So yeah, I mean, and that's okay. There's not there'll be other people who think, my goodness, that happened to me as well. Can anybody concur with what went on with Richard? I certainly could. Usually I start off all holy and then I get honest about the thing I'm feeling. So no, I can't read it out. There's too much. Plus, she's downstairs.
Hi, Dave.
Hey.
Hi,
June.
Hi, Dave. Yeah, I wrote, to be honest, in mine, it must be because I'm thinking about healing a lot, but I wrote on my notepad, healing for my eyes and for my joints. Because my joints has been playing up really bad lately, so, and I've been getting a lot of prayer for them, so that was the first thing that came to my mind, so I just wrote it down.
Okay, and then did you go on to anything else, June?
No, nothing else, just that.
Okay. It sounds a wee bit cognitive, right? I don't know how automatic that was, but it might be because that's the most prominent thing that's on. That's usually what we start off with. The thing that's most prominent in our head, and then so next time you do this, just let it go and just keep writing and see what happens.
Okay.
Becca Henderson.
Hello.
Right.
Well, I actually started writing. I don't really know what to write, and this situation makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I went on to really write more about how this situation makes me feel and the fact that it picked me out to chat at the end. So I have to think through that before this situation.
Well, and so what does, I mean, just thinking about that, right? So that's how you found the exercise. What is it telling you? You don't need to answer this now, but what is it telling you? And is there any change that you could make? So please, you don't need to chat about that now, but have a think about that. So Violetta, I don't think I've spoke to you very often. Can you talk to me? How was it for you? Let's dialogue. You need to unmute first. I don't do signing. Right, good.
Okay, well, I started off writing about the weather, how beautiful it's been.
Right, great.
And then it shifted onto my computer being quite old and maybe it needs to be changed. And then it shifted on to that my hands started to get sore because I'm not used to writing so much. And yeah, so just odd.
Was there any feelings come up for you, no?
It was a pleasant feeling.
Yeah.
All over the 6 minutes, it was just flowing and from one subject to the other. But it was quite pleasant. I quite enjoyed it.
Good, good. It's a great exercise. Let me see, who else can I pick on? Larissa. Come on, unmute yourself and give us some of your chat.
Hello.
So how's that exercise for you?
I didn't like it.
Oh, good. What was it you didn't like about it?
Well, as you mentioned there, the subconscious speaks the truth of where we are at.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I was just writing about, there's been a lot of drama happening in work lately, but usually I'm a very strong person and I don't let people see how I actually feel like.
Right.
So yeah, I just wrote a little bit of how rubbish I actually felt.
Good for you.
Inside, and yeah, just feeling quite low.
Mm-hmm. And that's good because that's probably happening in your subconscious. Things are triggering and making you feel low. And now, wait a minute, let me have another look at this. And you can kind of look at it through different lenses because it's came from your subconscious up to your conscious. And that's the whole idea of doing this. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. How are we for time? 8:40. Okay, time to dialogue some more with some people. This is really interesting. Sophie and Matthew.
Hi. I thought it was quite difficult. I kind of stared at the paper for a while before I actually start writing. And then when I did start writing, it just kind of went from like conjoining thoughts in similar words. So if I wrote like love, then I would write joy and peace for no reason, because those are the next two words in my head. And then just like things that I wanted to do and that I couldn't do. I didn't feel like it was very deep,
automatic,
spiritual.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like, yeah, like there was a lot about food because I was quite hungry, and then one of those, yeah, it was a strange feeling. I just got to the end of the page and was like, I don't know what to write anymore.
One of the things what happens to me when I'm doing this, because you spoke about love and peace and all of these things, and then food comes up. So in a similar way, I could be writing, let's say it's someone that's annoyed me. I usually start writing when something's annoying me. A bit like Larissa, if something's kind of externally annoying, this is when I start to write. But in the middle of it, I can get a sudden feeling of peace. And you think, is that right? Can you be peaceful and pissed off at the same time? And actually, you can. You can have the depth of peace somewhere in you, but what's happening to you at the moment, this thing that's going around in the brain, is something annoying you. And sometimes when you write this, you think, I don't really need to allow these people to have that amount of power in my life. I think I'll go back to the peace stage. You start to realize that it's power these people have over your peace.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that can often come from a childhood experience as well. Threat, fear, the way we've been treated, and so it can go quite deep as well. And the idea when you're doing this is to get right deep. Okay, Lena, let's hear from you.
I knew you were going to pick on me tonight.
Did you?
Yep.
So that was in your subcon. Maybe you're transferring it to me.
So yeah, I found it quite natural actually.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, the words just kind of came to me as I was writing them down, and it was basically about growing up. I grew up in quite a strict household, which could be challenging at times because my dad, like he thrived for perfection.
Right.
So, not that I never felt good enough or anything. He was a good father. He was quite strict on upbringing. And I feel that's transferred on me a wee bit because I kind of thrive for perfection as well, and I probably expect a lot from myself and my kids.
So when you,
but yeah, it was just all focused on that, and I found it quite natural actually.
The internalization of that as a child is that because if you've had a strict upbringing, it usually means that I have to strive to meet the standard before I'm acceptable even to myself. So we internalize. It's not that Dad didn't find us acceptable. So that's never what I'm saying here. But what happens in childhood is if we're not achieving the standard and Dad's giving it out regularly, we believe there's something wrong with us that we can't achieve the standard. That gets internalized, and that continues into adulthood. And it's not that you're not good enough. It's just that I'm never quite enough.
Yeah, not quite there. Yeah.
Just I'm never quite there. And so you got all sorts of different things. People become very high achievers with that. And so can it be achievement that can be the thing? I need to achieve. All the time they want to try and be perfectionists. And of course, at the extreme end of perfectionism is things like OCD and all of that sort of stuff can come out. So very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Let me hear from Matthew Grady.
Hi, you right? So yeah, for me, I think because I'm quite used to kind of writing poetry, or maybe when you're in school and you're writing massive textbooks after each other, I found it quite, I suppose it did change quite a lot. So I started off, like you could say, like talking about yourself, but for me it was kind of talking about what I knew, I suppose God thought about me, and then talking about who he is, and also then around expecting our baby girl. So I was kind of writing about that, and then it kind of led into writing into like how I was feeling, because my arm hasn't been the best recently. So it was kind of, you know, discussing around how I was feeling around that, but then just kind of knowing, you know, God was in control. So it was, you know, not trying to be like holy or anything, but
no.
it's just kind of like, that's what I kind of wrote. So I kind of used to writing like, I suppose like poetry or kind of things involving God and stuff like that in it. It was kind of, yeah, but it was amazing how fast it came out and the words were just coming, you know, and just kept writing and writing. You know, you could surprise how much you can write in, like, you know, like Richard was saying, in 6 minutes.
Yeah, and if you can write like that, very often what can happen for people that write poetry or interested in poetry, starting off with some automatic writing can, because you know how you get writer's block, you think, I don't know what to do here. So some people go into, you know, they make wee lists and the wee, what do you call it? Spidergrams and all of that sort of stuff. Sometimes just to go from the subconscious, they say the subconscious has its own intelligence, and just doing creative writing like that, just writing, automatic writing, suddenly a theme will emerge. And you go, so they say that subconscious is always trying to teach us something as well, that we can try and learn something from it. Helen Field, what do you think? You look as though you're in a field there. What's the background?
Yeah, it's my picture.
Oh, very good.
I found it was quite absorbing. I ended up talking about my mum and issues that I didn't resolve with her, and my daughter, who's pretty sick and is never getting better, and my husband. So they're all the things that are obsessing me at the moment. Right. And I ended up deciding I was like, sort of better be a butterfly, pretty useless bouncing around in a field. Would I ever know God properly in that state? Very self. Very self.
Very absorbing for you, and also a picture of maybe, were you wishing in that you wanted to be the butterfly? Is that what you were saying?
No.
Oh no, not you.
No, I need to be an eagle.
You need to be an eagle. Yeah. Butterflies are far more alluring than eagles. I like butterflies.
Yeah, I've done that for way too long.
Yeah, okay. They are beautiful though. Okay. Debbie Winchester, I'd like to hear from you for all kinds of reasons, but I won't go into them.
I actually, for a change, I managed to write quite a lot. I got the whole A4 page. Usually I don't get on so well with these kind of things, but...
Did you use joined up writing, Debbie?
It was actually scribbly and I don't like it. You really took me out of my comfort zone making me scribble. I love to write neat, but yeah, I went with it. So it was good. Yeah,
no,
I just
good for you.
Talked about some of the frustrations I'm going through at the minute, so it was quite easy to fill the page reasonably.
Yeah, it's good to get them out there and then you can own them because they're yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stella, what about you?
I found it a bit difficult. Well, because I don't know, my mind is just kind of blank. So I was just thinking and waiting for the first word that comes in my head, and then I'll write it down and write it down and write it down. So basically, they are just words. They're not really like sentences.
That's okay. That happens as well. And often the patterns come out, and these words. The thing is, it only needs to have meaning for you, Stella. It doesn't need to mean anything to anyone else. So review it and think, does this have any meaning for me? You know, unless you were just writing lists of food or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But even maybe that's got some meaning. So, okay, very good. Steph Smith, are you still with us? Gone, I think. Oh, yeah.
I'm here.
Right,
yeah,
come on.
yeah.
Let's hear for you, Steph.
So I started off with a word that, to be honest, I was kind of scared of, and I felt like it was kind of like a word that God was kind of opening, like, because I feel like He's trying to do inner healing, like He's trying to take me into a journey of inner healing that happened like in my childhood and stuff. So like He gave me like just this word came. And then, to be honest, I kind of just, crossed through it, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that right now. So I kind of just went, I don't know, like I kind of just just started writing words, and then so
when you crossed it through, that's got huge meaning.
Yeah.
For you, you don't need to share it all now, but you write that stuff down, you go, oh no, let's not go there, right? So it sounds to me like the subconscious is saying, Steph, you're going to have to deal with this, and you're going, I'm just not quite ready yet, and that's okay as well. So when you're ready, it'll come. Good, but you know it's there now. There's no going back, Steffi. I love this part. It's just great. Margaret, what about you? Need to unmute.
Yeah, I'll just echo probably what everybody else is saying. At first, I was like, "Oh no, don't want to do this," but it came pretty freely, and I'm quite surprised actually. It's highlighted a couple of wee things.
Yeah.
To give me some thought. Yeah.
So if I just share this wee thing again, thanks everyone for their input there. It's been really interesting. Anybody desperate to share their experience on that? Okay. Let me just share these wee things. This wee thing again.
Carol is desperate, Dave.
Who's desperate?
Carol.
Come on, Carol. Let's hear it.
Well, it's more a case of I think I just went completely down the wrong road, because I was thinking about the course itself, because I was looking at the screen and I was thinking about the course and the implications of trying to do the course and wanting to, but I'm so far away, and all of those kinds of things. So it wasn't actually, I don't know if I got the wrong end of the stick, because unlike other people that were just having subconscious thoughts in that way, mine were more related to the actual.
There's no wrong.
Actually now.
You can't really get this wrong, okay? So what it's telling me, what's really telling me, what was forefront in your mind was what was going on in the course. However, if you just keep going and engage with what am I feeling about what's going on in the course here, right? And then let that stuff emerge.
It did.
Oh, there you go. That's not wrong with that.
Yeah, it did. And okay.
So you can't really do this wrong. It's your writing.
Okay, that's okay then. I thought
No, it's fine.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So where are we now? We've done that. Okay, last 10 minutes here. Some Q&A. So it's up to you guys now to ask me you can ask me anything. I'm going to stop the share. So it's Q&A time. About psychodynamic, CBT, person-centered. Go ahead. See if I can take the risk of, if I don't know, I'll pretend I do. No, I won't. Right. Okay.
Hi, Dave. Can I go first, Richard?
Sure, Richard.
Just going back to that wee exercise that we did.
Okay.
I covered 8 different subjects, from my ex-wife to my mother to my pastor. I'm finished on myself, a few other things in between that I'm not going to say. Doing an exercise like that, if you had the opportunity to read it, would you come to a conclusion that I need a counsellor?
Whether I come to the conclusion or not is irrelevant. I think that you need to come to the conclusion. So if I say yes, I think you should go for counselling. I think everybody should go for counselling, whether they think they need it or not. I think everybody needs it. There's people that think, oh, I don't. See, people think that counselling's for broken heart. It is for that. But we've all got stuff. There's nobody had a perfect upbringing. And if you have had a perfect upbringing, that's highly dysfunctional. There's no such thing as perfection. And I think what's happened in our society now is many, particularly amongst the middle classes, where they've tried to create a perfect environment for their children and wrapped them up in cotton wool, and then they're confronted with going to university or having to get a job, and they find out that they're not wonderful. They're not the most beautiful person in the whole world, or at least people don't treat them like they were. So there's something quite good about having a bit of conflict in our upbringing, even if it's not perfect, you know. But I think it sounds to me though, Richard, right? Just reading in between the lines, if you don't mind, you brought it up, so I'll just say it.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So you've spoken a lot about external people, right? Mum or dad and pastor and a couple other things, right? So all these external influences. And I think it would do you some good to recognize what are the things that I still hear? What are the voices that I still hear in my head that are coming from these people, but it's not really what I want to think or believe?
Okay,
So,
can I just come back on that a little?
Sure.
I'll show you a little. On some of it, on some of the voices I hear is I'm useless. I'll never be any good for anybody.
There you go.
From others, especially my pastor and his wife, that I am absolutely fantastic and great, and they're always encouraging me. So there's that tension of the two voices in my head, if you like.
So the question is, at the deepest level, Richard Glass, what's the one you believe?
I believe I'm a child of God.
Ah, you avoided that very well. Okay.
That was a cop-out.
That was an absolute cop-out, but never mind. You know exactly where that was going, and you just avoided that. But well, now that's a typical thing that would happen in a psychodynamic room, right? And I would be taking a lot more time to go to that place. But have a look at some of that stuff and find out, gee, when I hear those voices, see, here's the thing, and this is for all of you to hear this. There are people that told us things or behaved towards us in a particular way. We believed it as children till we think that it's true, but in fact it's a lie. So we believe the lie that says you're no good, the lie that says you'll never be enough. It's a lie, and it doesn't come from God. He says we're wonderfully made, but we, at a deep, deep level in our subconscious and our emotional level, we believe that lie. And see when we actually get to the truth of it and say, actually, I do believe that. I do believe that lie. It changes. It's when you pretend that you don't believe that lie that it stays the same. Because suddenly you go, actually, I do believe that. Okay, I know that it's a lie now. I know it's a lie. So can I do something to change that? Where am I going to get this new information from? But if you sit in denial with it and pretend it's not there, it just stays. Okay, any more questions?
Yes, Davey. My question is about mindfulness.
Sure.
It's I'd like to understand it better because I don't know that much about it, but the little I know is that I don't know, maybe it originated with yoga.
All right, here's the big fear. The great myth of sometimes ill-informed Christian teaching, right, is that mindfulness has got something to do with yoga. It hasn't. And actually, mindfulness is quite simply going for making that cup of tea. It's about being mindful. There's nothing yoga in that. Mindful just means coming in to the present moment and being aware, physically, mentally, emotional, being mindful, being mindful. Jesus tells us, he tells us to be mindful all the time. Look, he says, consider, he uses the word consider. That just means be mindful of. Be mindful of the birds of the air. Be mindful of the flowers in the field. Be mindful, consider just means be mindful of. And meditation, which a lot of people mix that up with Eastern philosophy as well. And yet the Bible's full of meditation, full of it. Meditate on these things. consider it deeply as meditation, is where you actually focus on a story rather than just the present moment. So that's the difference between mindfulness and meditation. But don't worry about all this. People say it comes from Eastern philosophy. It's been around a lot longer than Eastern philosophy. People were being mindful a lot longer than anybody invented the philosophies, that's for sure.
Ellen has got a question.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't a question, it was just a comment. I heard an interview from a person who started putting mindfulness into practice. I just thought you might want to be aware of that, or you probably are.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't say a comment, but.
So what do you think?
Well, I personally don't like anything to do with the Eastern religions, but I'm less scared of them than I used to be.
Right, okay. And do you think mindfulness is Eastern? And yet Jesus,
well, actually, when we were doing
Jesus was from the Middle East, so we're talking about a Middle Eastern religion in Christianity, by the way.
I've stopped doing 3 things at once, and Jesus must have done it because he went very slowly when he went to Jairus' daughter. And he had time to think about people.
And how mindful he was of Mary and Martha, and how mindful he was when he spent time with the Father. You look at David and how mindful he was. Jacob, I think it was, who Laban had said to him that he couldn't marry Rachel, and so he sat in the side of a field and started banging with a wee stick on, and the next thing, all the sheep that were born, because Laban had told him he can get all the spotted sheep. So he starts doing this. He became mindful of what Laban had said and wanted God to intervene in this. He just started doing this, and the next thing, all these sheep. I mean, Christianity is a pretty strange religion. You know, it's pretty strange. Virgin births and, you know, sorry, a man eating locusts, really? And we think, see, we've westernized it all. And we're saying, oh, we need to sanitize all this. Christianity is a Middle Eastern religion. It's not Western. Let's remember that comes from the Middle East. Oh, what about that? Yes, Hazel.
I just had a kind of question that is sort of to do with that, and I'd kind of been thinking about it a bit earlier on as well when you were talking about like the influences of culture and society.
Yeah.
And kind of we see Christianity through our Western worldview.
Absolutely.
And, you know, other religions or faiths they see through their worldview. And how, I guess, is there any tools in counselling to kind of deconstruct worldviews or deconstruct, those sorts of things that are stopping people from maybe seeing truth in their own life or in who they are?
I think there is, although it's not the aim of counselling. It's not the aim of counselling.
Yeah.
I think that if somebody's come to a Christian counsellor, it gives you a bit of a door to open it up. It's the knowledge of the truth that sets us free. The best example we could possibly be is to be loving towards your client that may experience something of Jesus instead of some wrathful God. And so when we're being loving and kind and being mindful of our clients, you know, when I'm talking about practicing mindfulness, I'm not talking about being mindful of astral planing or previous lives and all of that junk, right? You know, seriously. But some people get a great deal of comfort from that. But would you not want the comfort that doesn't just change you now, but changes you forever? You can do both. Seriously, you know. Anyway, you could go on and on arguing about that sort of stuff forever. So be careful about mindfulness, I have to say. Watch where you go. There's okay, George.
Thanks, Dave. My question is about someone with mental health and schizophrenia. Which I think you mentioned which one would you recommend, but would it be the psychodynamic or CBT, and how would you be able to help someone in such condition, either the person with mental health or schizophrenia?
Well, mental health is a huge big subject, George. So is there a description of the presenting issue, for example? So what is she presenting with, this person?
Maybe the person is a student and has problem with writing exams, or couldn't do his exams and failing all the time, and chronic anxiety and depression.
So chronic anxiety. So it depends where the anxieties come from. CBT to start off with. So because the exam, oh, I'm going to fail, and then dad's going to be disappointed with me, all of that sort of stuff. And so CBT can certainly, the exercises of CBT can certainly settle some of that down initially. So it's a mental health condition. It's a mental health condition, but not necessarily a disorder at this stage. When it becomes a disorder, and that means it's repetitive and is affecting every area of life, not sleeping, the behavior is becoming much stranger, then I would go to psychodynamic.
Okay.
But sometimes some CBT interventions can really help in this area.
Okay.
Dave, somebody asked, how do we practically do inner healing on our own with God?
It's a great question, but it is possible. First of all, we need to recognize that God is a healing God, right? The way I would see it is we have to move in faith. So faith is being sure of what you haven't seen. So how do we actually do that? Yeah, I'm sure it's going to happen. Again, too much cognition. If we can use our imagination to imagine what it's going to be like when I'm fully healed, what you actually start doing is God will show you what you're going to be like when you're fully healed, and you start celebrating in your mind of what it's like when I'm fully healed. And as if faith is being sure of what we hope for, being certain of what we do not see, not just certain in our thinking, but certain emotionally. And so when we can connect it cognitively and emotionally, the brain starts changing and there's a wonderful wee gland in our brain called the pineal gland. Sophie might know a wee bit about this, but that pineal gland actually sends healing crystals right through our whole body. But you have to actually experience it as if the healing has already happened. So it's that experiential. And sometimes if you do this and you're spending time with God in this way, you might come to the point where you say, actually, God, it doesn't matter. Just being with you. Paul got it when he said, Christ, the grace of Christ is sufficient for me. Because he got to such a place of bliss with God that it didn't matter all the, you can make me poor, you can make me rich, I've been without, I've had plenty. Christ is sufficient for me. That's what Paul was saying. He'd get into a place with God that was so overwhelming that the rest of the external world didn't matter. That should be the aim of every Christian. Woof! Powerful stuff, isn't it? Okay, how are we for time? Oh, yes, I've got me 9 minutes over my time. Folks, it's been wonderful to speak to you all. Lots of people have already left. I'm sorry I didn't get around you all. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Bless you.
Great week. Bye.
Thank you.
Ruby, just you stay on for a minute.
Bye, Dave. Good day, everybody. God bless.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.